person would jump immediately to UFOs isn't that far out in left field. A lot of reports come in of people seeing UFOs enter into clouds.
Now this is in the Smoky Mountains of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Do y'all see? It's like a perfect ring, right? Like what you would describe as, it looks like a ring of light or a ring of fire. And what's very interesting is that this year in October, there's going to be a solar eclipse that they call the Ring of Fire.
Suddenly, the sky above Chattanooga lit up with a blazing ring of fire, leaving everyone who saw it in awe. This mysterious sight quickly drew crowds, sparking conversations filled with excitement and a hint of fear. Some speculated that it might be a supernatural sign, maybe even a biblical symbol. But while fiery visions in the sky often have more earthly explanations, they're still rare and mesmerizing. What if this ring of fire is something more than just a simple anomaly? Join us as we delve into the mystery and uncover the truth behind this breathtaking event. Tennessee's celestial secret. Fire rings in the sky can happen for several reasons. Most often, they are caused by things like industrial processes. For example, if there's a fire at a factory or a controlled explosion, it can sometimes create a large ring of smoke. These rings can also form when unique weather conditions mix with smoke or clouds. However, these rings don't last long. They usually break apart and disappear pretty quickly as they move away from where they started. In the case of the Chattanooga fire ring, no clear explanation was given along with the reports of the sighting. This lack of information left a lot of room for people's imaginations to run wild. Events like this often turn into local legends, especially when they happen in a place as scenic and full of history as Chattanooga. With its rich background and beautiful landscapes, it's no wonder this city makes a great setting for such intriguing stories. But could there be something more to this event? For many believers, the idea that Jesus could return to America is a topic of great interest. Some view unusual occurrences like this fire ring as potential signs of his return, possibly indicating that America might play a special role in these future events. The Bible mentions signs in the heavens before Christ's return, and while most of these can be explained by natural phenomena, they still stir a deep sense of anticipation and reflection on spiritual matters. While it might be tempting to think of a fire ring as a sign of something mystical or religious, the truth is that these occurrences are more about the interesting ways human activities can mix with natural events. For those who are curious about science or the environment, these events can also be a reminder of how industrial activities can affect the world around us, including the quality of the air we breathe. But just when you think the mystery is solved, there's more to consider. What if these events, whether ordinary or extraordinary, are part of a larger divine plan? For some, the idea that Jesus might return to America specifically adds a layer of meaning to these occurrences. Could it be that America, often seen as a land of freedom and opportunity, is also chosen as a place for such a significant event? While this is purely speculative, it's a thought that crosses the minds of many who witness strange events like the Chattanooga fire ring. These kinds of sightings often stir up a mix of emotions and ideas, ranging from fear to wonder. People tend to be fascinated by the unknown, and a fire ring in the sky is just the kind of strange event that sparks curiosity and imagination. For those who believe in the possibility of Jesus returning to America, such events can feel like more than just a coincidence. They can seem like a confirmation of their hopes and beliefs. Whether you see it as a scientific curiosity or a mystical sign, the appearance of a fire ring in Chattanooga certainly brought some excitement to an otherwise normal day in the city. It's these little moments of mystery that make life more interesting and give us something to talk about. And who knows, maybe the next time you look up at the sky, you'll see something just as fascinating. Next, let's dive into the book of Revelation to see what it says about the future of nations. The modern Babylons. The book of Revelation is a fascinating part of the Bible that talks about the end times and the fate of nations. It doesn't directly mention countries like the United States, Russia, or China, but some people believe that these nations might be symbolized in its text. For instance, some scholars think that when Revelation talks about Babylon, it could be referring to a powerful country like the United States. Revelation is different from other books in the New Testament. It was written by John, one of Jesus' closest followers. He wrote it while living in Ephesus, a city where he also stayed with Mary, the mother of Jesus. John wrote this book in the late 1st century during a time when Christians were facing a lot of persecution. At that time, the Roman Emperor Domitian required everyone to declare their loyalty to him, which was a big problem for Christians who believed that only Jesus was their true Lord. This tough situation is what led John to write Revelation. The book was meant to encourage Christians who were being persecuted and even killed for their faith. The word martyr originally meant witness, but over time it came to mean someone who dies for their beliefs, which happened to many Christians during this period. The messages in Revelation were believed to come directly from God to Jesus, then passed through an angel to John, who wrote down his visions and the messages he received. John's visions in Revelation are very detailed and sometimes hard to understand. He tried to describe things that were extraordinary and beyond normal human experience, like hearing voices from the sky and seeing angelic beings. The main theme of Revelation is about the return of Jesus to earth, which is a key event mentioned throughout the Bible. One of the most striking parts of Revelation is its description of the fall of Babylon in chapters 17 and 18. Babylon is portrayed as a symbol of all that is wrong in the world, a place of corruption and moral decay. In Revelation, Babylon isn't just a city but represents any place or system that stands against God's authority. This can include cities, governments, and even false religious teachings that lead people away from God's truth. But this isn't the only interesting part. Revelation also contrasts two cities, Babylon and Jerusalem. Babylon represents everything that is corrupt and evil, while Jerusalem symbolizes holiness and purity. The story of these cities reflects the moral journey of humanity, showing how people can either follow the path of corruption or strive for holiness. As the story in Revelation progresses, it describes a series of disastrous events that signal the coming judgment on Babylon. The city is destroyed, and the whole world seems to fall apart with it. Mountains disappear, islands vanish, and hailstorms of massive size strike the earth. These events are shown as God's response to the sins of humanity. Throughout the Bible, cities are often depicted as centers of moral decline. From the earliest mentions, cities are linked to figures like Lamech, who was known for his violent and corrupt behavior. This suggests that cities, with their crowds and anonymity, can sometimes foster sinful behaviors, making it easier for people to stray from moral paths. But this wasn't the end of the story. The book of Revelation also talks about the dangers of greed and pride. It warns against the love of money, which is described as the root of many evils. The message is clear: you can't serve both wealth and God at the same time. People must choose between living a life focused on spiritual values or one driven by material desires. In any thriving city, it's easy to forget the divine presence that shaped the world around us. People often get caught up in admiring their own achievements and creations. The tall buildings and monuments we construct can become symbols of our pride, showing off how much we think of ourselves. A classic example of this is the Tower of Babel, built near the Euphrates River, a place that connected Asia, Africa, and Europe. This tower was the brainchild of Nimrod, a powerful leader and hunter who believed that strength and power made a person righteous, and that only the strongest would survive. The goal of building this tower was to create the tallest structure ever made by human hands. It was meant to be a symbol of collective pride, as people wanted to leave their mark on history with its great height. But while they were focused on reaching the skies, another threat was growing in the east: Babylon. Eventually, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon attacked Jerusalem, destroyed its sacred temple, took its treasures, and forced its people into exile for 70 years. This tragedy happened because Jerusalem lost its special place and began to resemble other cities, forgetting its unique purpose. But this wasn't the worst part. In the Bible, an angel calls on John to witness the downfall of Babylon, a symbol of corruption and moral decay. In the book of Revelation, chapter 17, an angel approaches John with one of the 7 bowls of God's wrath. The angel invites him to see the fall of a corrupt figure, represented as a prostitute, who leads the world's leaders astray with her wickedness and draws the masses into moral ruin through her intoxicating influence. This prophecy carries a strong warning. Babylon's fate will be severe, much like the Tower of Babel's. In the scriptures, Babylon stands for religious unfaithfulness and moral corruption. It represents a false spirituality that turns people away from true worship and leads them into spiritual and moral decay. In Revelation, Babylon is portrayed as a woman involved in corrupt relationships with worldly rulers. symbolizing the deep rot and deception that entraps societies in false beliefs. John is taken in a vision by the angel into a wilderness, where he sees this woman sitting on a beast covered with blasphemous names, with many heads and horns, representing great power and arrogance against God. She is dressed in rich purple and scarlet, adorned with jewels and pearls, holding a golden cup filled with her vile actions and the filth of her corruption. On her forehead is written, "Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the earth's abominations." But this wasn't the end of the horrors. The woman is described as being drunk on the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus, symbolizing the extreme persecution that believers faced. This image is shocking, showing the brutality inflicted on those who remained faithful to Jesus, often by those who claim to follow him. Even though wealth and power can lead to arrogance and greed, they provide no protection against divine justice. The golden cup she holds represents the seductive charm and deceitful practices that Babylon uses to maintain her influence, leading many down her destructive path. She is infamous for her wicked deeds, promoting idolatry and evil, and she takes pleasure in the suffering of those who stand up for Jesus, with no remorse for her actions. This story isn't just a historical lesson about the consequences of turning away from divine guidance. It's also a warning about the dangers of compromising morals and the inevitable justice that comes to those who indulge in corruption. It reminds us of the potential downfall that awaits societies and leaders who stray from the path of righteousness and become consumed by their desire for power. Moving forward, we'll look at what these apocalyptic predictions mean for us today. The call to humility. As we look at the passages about apocalyptic predictions, it becomes clear that these frightening events highlight the importance of spiritual teachings. It's crucial to stay aware of the temptation of modern religious movements that might seem appealing, but drift away from the core truths of spirituality. Instead, we should avoid harmful ideas and focus on the true meaning of living a life guided by divine principles. By following the humility and gratitude shown by Christ, we can better resist the misleading messages spread by untrustworthy spiritual leaders. A powerful message echoes from the heavens, announcing the inevitable downfall of Babylon the Great, a city that has become a home for evil. This city, once full of life, has turned into a shelter for demons, a prison for everything impure, a place avoided by anything good. Nations have indulged in its sinful pleasures, and rulers have enjoyed its immoral wealth, drawn in by its extravagant luxury. But the fate of Babylon is sealed. It must pay double for its sins, facing divine punishment that matches its own excesses. Just as it thrived in indulgence, it will be overwhelmed by sorrow and despair. Though Babylon brags about its power and eternal success, it is destined to face devastating plagues and complete destruction as declared by divine judgment. Given these descriptions, one might wonder, is the United States of America Babylon? This question arises because the U.S., with its significant global influence, vast wealth, and cultural dominance, mirrors some of the characteristics attributed to Babylon in these passages. Just as Babylon was a beacon of prosperity and power, the U.S. is often seen as a symbol of modern success. However, with this success comes the risk of falling into the same traps of materialism, moral decay, and spiritual complacency. The passages challenge us to think critically about whether the U.S., or any nation for that matter, could be following a similar path that leads to eventual downfall. The fall of Babylon, which represents deep wickedness and idolatry, was determined by God long ago. An angel, possibly Christ himself, will descend to defeat this foe and spread the true gospel across the world. Babylon's appeal lies in its wealth and luxury, which lures many into spiritual corruption. This city uses its riches to trap souls, leading them away from righteousness through tempting but sinful practices. The message is clear. Those seeking divine mercy must abandon Babylon and help bring about its fall, hinting that some faithful individuals still remain within its walls, waiting for a call to leave. Those who join in Babylon's sins will inevitably face severe consequences. But this wasn't the worst part. The mourning for Babylon's destruction will be profound among those who once prospered from its wealth. Kings and merchants who benefited from its luxury will mourn from a distance, horrified by the judgment that destroys the city in mere hours. The long list of luxurious goods, gold, silver, precious stones, and fine fabrics, among others, will no longer have buyers. Babylon's economic collapse is complete, its grandeur forever lost, symbolizing how temporary earthly wealth truly is. Again, we must ask ourselves, could the United States be heading towards a similar fate? The U.S., with its thriving economy and vast consumption of luxury goods, reflects many of the traits of Babylon. The warning here is not just about a city or a nation, but about the dangers of prioritizing material wealth over spiritual values. If the U.S. continues to pursue wealth and power at the expense of moral integrity, could it too face a downfall as severe as Babylon's? This question pushes us to reflect on the spiritual state of the nation and consider what changes might be necessary to avoid such a fate. However, the sorrow of those who mourn Babylon is not born out of spiritual regret, but from the loss of their worldly comforts and riches. They do not grieve for the sake of divine justice, but for their personal losses. The message here is clear. Placing value on material wealth is foolish, as it leads to spiritual poverty. Instead, the wealthy are urged to seek the lasting riches found in Christ, which offer eternal satisfaction rather than short-lived pleasure. Babylon's fall is a significant event, celebrated by God's followers both on earth and in heaven. This downfall is seen as divine justice in action, ensuring that such corruption will never plague humanity again. The narrative encourages reflection on the fleeting nature of earthly power and wealth, pushing us to focus on eternal spiritual truths. But there's more to consider. The similarities between Babylon and modern nations, especially the United States, prompt us to think about which present-day entities might share these same traits. The prophecy hints at a global influence, both political and cultural, that could be linked to today's superpowers. The U.S. holds significant sway over global politics, economics, and culture, much like Babylon did in its time. This reflection on the role of political and economic dominance in the light of spiritual prophecy encourages a deeper look at current global dynamics and how they might fit these prophetic descriptions. In the end, the passages from Revelation remind us of the inevitable judgment that all nations will face, urging us to hold on to divine principles rather than giving in to worldly temptations. The vivid image of Babylon's fall serves as more than just a warning against spiritual corruption. It's a call to prioritize the enduring over the temporary, the divine over the worldly. But the story doesn't end here. As we move forward, it's important to consider how these lessons apply to our own lives and the world around us. Are we, in our personal or national lives, building our own versions of Babylon, caught up in materialism and turning away from true spiritual values? When we look at the United States, we must ask ourselves whether the nation is aligning with the characteristics of Babylon, and if so, what steps can be taken to steer away from such a dangerous path. This is a question worth pondering as we navigate our way through life's many distractions. In conclusion, these passages challenge us to look beyond the surface of our lives in the world, urging us to seek the deeper, lasting truths that will guide us through whatever challenges may come. It's a call to be mindful, to resist the pull of superficial pleasures, and to focus on what truly matters in the long run. As we consider the United States' role on the world stage, the question remains, will it be remembered as a modern-day Babylon, or can it chart a different course? As we reflect on the parallels between Babylon and modern superpowers like the United States, we must ask, are we living in a new Babylon? Like, comment, and subscribe to join the discussion.